Hi folks, my name is Franco Tonelli, and in today's program I will try to answer some of your letters that I found very important, because I think that some of you may be asking the same questions. But before I do that, I'd like to tell you that, as you see, I have more than 100 videos on vocal technique, on placement, vocal definitions. You won't find probably as complete vocal advice on YouTube or anywhere on the web free. At the same time, I'd like to say, before I start reading these emails, that it's very important to know that I never advise to study alone. My question was always that you have to have a vocal teacher, you have to have a person who is listening to what you're doing, and of course, not anybody. If you want to be an opera singer in the future, of course, you need to have an opera maestro. And again, among those opera maestros, there are some who cannot teach, who sang well, but they cannot teach. They have no idea how to teach. And those who actually become very good teachers. Among non-singers, it's almost exception, and again, I don't recommend it until maybe you are already an established technician, and then you can study with a great pianist, a musician, a concertmeister who will give you great advice, and that will be a great thing and maybe for you, but not when you're learning vocal technique. Of course, all the questions can be answered theoretically, but I think that theoretical answers, as much as theoretical questions, are a little bit irrelevant, and I'll explain why. Because when you're talking about your problems, and I don't know your voice, I've never heard your voice live, okay, even in a recording, and you're saying I have this and this and this, there's a common problem, but I cannot help you specifically, of course, because I need to hear your voice, at least in a recording. As much recording is line 2, we know. It's very important to have a live sound of a student who is having problems. So, in a way, any suggestions that anybody gives you on your question is very theoretical unless he knows you. Those type of questions usually are well answered when a professional speaks to you, when a professional who basically knows everything. He just needs a little tip. In that case, advice like this can help. Now, let's go to the letters. Here's the guy. He sent me first a comment on one of my videos, and then he sent me a private letter. And I'm going to read both of it. Of course, I'm not going to mention the private letter's names. He mentions the certain particular names of his teacher. So, dear Maestro Tonelli, I am an 18-year-old college student learning opera for 1 year. My previous teacher, who also worked with great singers like Pavarotti, had been teaching me placement technique, saying only way to sing higher. Cry and whine to hit higher, and yawn into voice. He told me to sing loud during every practice, and my voice felt very sore and tired. When I told him about appoggio, and if he could teach it, I showed him your videos, my videos, and he said that it is too hard, and I could never learn it, because he could never master it himself. That placement is easier. Now, one thing is obvious here, and those who are listening to me recognize his letter, and I'm not going to mention his name. I think that at least, as I understand from the letter, that you left this teacher because he couldn't teach you appoggio. But I would say to his defense, that at least he was very honest. It's very difficult to find an honest people when they do business, and most of the answers you usually will take like this: oh, this appoggio is something like a negative message. At least he told you that appoggio is more difficult. I always say that in my programs, maybe not always, but in several programs I say that appoggio takes more time and more patience than a placement school. Of course it gives incredible results, but it takes a little bit more. Let me read the further thing. I found my musical ear where my natural resonance is, experienced sensation of appoggio, and discovered my natural appoggio zone using all of your videos. My question is, after I stopped going to these teacher's lessons and started using your exercise after 7 months, my appoggio range stops at F after middle C. After that I get louder and start to use my throat. It feels impossible to go higher no matter how much I try. Please tell me, tip to use please. I'm stuck, and my teacher said I should be able to hit high C easily if I tried hard enough, but only damaged my voice. I have almost full baritone range G2 to F4 using natural appoggio technique. I can sing anything in this range, connected, smooth, with a little or no strain on throat. Any higher feels impossible. I cannot go myself to sing in mezza voce. The full voice and falsetto is all I know how to sing in. Okay, so we see that from the letter, as one famous thinker and philosopher said, the answer lies in the question. You can see that definitely, first of all, I have to tell you, no matter what I send to you, I can give you the same general advice. And it won't sound really nice, because I imagine that what can I say to this letter, okay, without knowing your voice and the whole history of how you develop. All I can say, probably don't support well, or you don't have the strength enough yet in a diaphragm since you're just 18 years old. Listen, appoggio is a physical movement, and it takes development. It takes some time to develop, like any sport. I would say this type of sport, singers mature in opera only after they're 35, and it's a reality. You know, it's very rare. 30 years old singer, which is, you know, still his voice is in development. Usually, I would say the most mature voice comes at 40 and develops of these brilliance, depending on the singer, up to 55 years old, up to 60. Anyways, in this particular case, I have different guesses. I can waste my time on guesses. You're not tenor, you're bass, and this is one of the reasons that you cannot go there. Second reason is that your chiaroscuro voice is really not balanced. So when you, for example, sing with a darker voice, and if you go up to F, and then you cannot go any further without straining it, it means that your voice doesn't have enough chiaro, doesn't have enough squillante. Because if your voice is fully balanced chiaroscuro voice, right, all you need is to support it and to get higher on this note. If your voice lacks chiaro or scuro, I mean, there is no balance. And who is telling you who is a balance? You're listening to yourself. You may have your sensation of great support, or you might have a recording. And I already showed you in a recording, it's very difficult to understand the balance between chiaro and scuro. Chiaro scuro is something that is a big liar. You know, if you hear that in a recording, you might be thinking, oh, this is enough chiaro. It's for those voices who have basically a lot of scuro voice and disbalanced chiaro. So there are different possible ways of fixing that problem. I mean, again, this is so general that I cannot really answer, and nobody can answer. I try to answer to you right now. So again, it could be support, it could be not balanced chiaroscuro, it could be that you're in the wrong fat. You're not a tenor, you're not a baritone. As much as I know, you study with a baritone, and actually I know this guy that you study with, not personally, but I know him, and I think he basically had a good technique. I wouldn't say he had bad technique at all. Maybe it was not 100% appoggio, but it was a good technique, and it was quite a beautiful voice. Anyways, let's go to the most important thing. I can only help you, of course, if I see you. And if you have a class, at least, I can tell you, assess you on what you need to do any further. And I always recommend to find a teacher. Again, to find a teacher, if you cannot afford it, then you still have to have a check-out control once a month. I don't know. It all depends. If you're 18 years old, man, you're too young to take your own lessons, you know, especially in opera. If you were a folk singer or pop singer, I don't know, it will be probably a little bit less challenging, but opera is a really dangerous thing, so you need to have a person who actually is watching you and telling you how you sound. So it's important. Don't leave your teachers just because you find that they not necessarily know appoggio. As I told you, some teachers, they actually teach appoggio not knowing what they're teaching, because the brainwashing was so deep from the school, and you know, it's a mass media, the democracy, if you like, everybody will speak, oh, this is the faster way. Everybody knows that placement school is a faster way, but not everybody wants to be the fast and mediocre singer. That's another story. Some people like to have great instruments, and appoggio gives you that. So I say, I'm sorry if I did not answer to your particular question, because I have to have a particular file. I need to hear your voice, and I need to hear it preferably live or in a good recordings. Now, this is coming to terminology. A question on, there was a comment from, this time it's not politically correct or incorrect to name his name, is James Morgan 293. He commented on my video, coaching Traviata, Lungi da lei, in Europe in masterclass. This is the comment. Lungi da lei from La Traviata, masterclass with Franco Tenelli. Here you're saying cover the passaggio notes, but in the singing science course you're saying otherwise. I am confused. Dear James Morgan, I don't blame you to be confused, because this kind of ideas, the ideas of appoggio, they're old, of course, they're old as a practical application. There were singers who used appoggio full-time or 99%, and I already mentioned those singers. Most of the schools are brainwashed with the old information. As I said, I put my terminology, terms dictionary, because I wanted you to clear your ideas. And when I say cover, in this particular case, this conservatory didn't know appoggio at all. And so the only way to deliver that understanding, actually not to open. Lauri Volpi was saying, a great teacher and a great tenor, it's better to say not to open on passaggio rather than cover. In this particular lesson, and the whole school is based on covering. I use, and I agree with that, I use this term covering, but I meant actually support and open throat. Because some of the singers actually understand covering as I understand appoggio. Some singers, what I'm saying is those singers who sing with one timbral register, and they say they're singing with placement school, they just don't understand their own technique. They do sing with appoggio. If a tenor, baritone, soprano, or any voice has one timbral voice, there's no connections between passaggio and the head voice or anything, there's one voice, that is called appoggio technique. But sometimes those singers who study with placement, I studied with placement school, I told you, and one of my first teacher was an opera tenor, great maestro and great tenor, dramatic tenor. And in my first years of study, my throat was very, very tired also. He taught me basically placement most of the times rather than support. Again, what I'm repeating is that brought me very quickly auditions to the opera house, and very grateful for my first teacher, Maestro Nodar Andrulaza, that he made me a tenor. He knew I was a tenor, he told me I was a tenor, and he made possible for me to audition when I was only in 4 years of studies in the Grand Opera in Georgia. So I won the audition and I became a young soloist. But the point is, when you don't support and you become professional, it will damage your voice, definitely, without knowing how to support. And that's exactly what happened to me. Actually, I was very quick, it wasn't very fast, but I was giving a very demanding roles. Starting with Rigoletto Duke, Don José, Canio, and even very, very versatile roles, like I had to sing sometimes Almaviva and Don Giovanni, Don Ottavio, which was not very good, but at least what was good about my experience in my first opera years, that I was singing, let's say, Don Ottavio with my own voice. I didn't have to transform it into some kind of Mozartian voice. So in that sense, it's of course less dangerous. What's dangerous when you're changing repertoire and somebody tries to make you a Mozartian tenor out of dramatic tenor or spinto tenor, which is very dangerous for the singer. So it's a good note, because I know that confusion is, and I'm telling you that what I mean is the open throat. You can call it cover if you like, which for me, the words are less important. Of course, they confuse students. Cover itself, and I talk about so many times, you can just check my programs about covering. Covering versus placement, covering, what is covering, real covering. It's very clear in my programs what I mean by covering. And the problem with the terminology that they're confused. I mean, the problem that when you hear this or that terminology, vocal cliché terminology, the problem with that every teacher, every professor means a particular thing that it is connecting to his experience. It could be his personal experience, or it could be the experience of the collective mind, the school he studied with that influenced his opinion and his thinking as a vocalist, and now he's conditioned by this particular school and thinking only in the terms of this, what school taught him. So that's another story. Of course, you're very welcome to ask me some questions, but I suggest, first of all, and this is, I want to repeat it again, for those students who maybe didn't hear or didn't have all my lessons listened to, I advise you to find a teacher who, if you want to study appoggio, this is quite fresh and new words, so they might not necessarily know appoggio. What is appoggio? Because now I hear it becomes popular and everybody is claiming, I'm appoggio teacher. I'm sorry. Again, I repeat for the first letter correspondence that your teacher was absolutely right when he said it's difficult. But now it's a tendency is appoggio. Everybody wants to be appoggio. But remember, the appoggio is a particular way of singing. It's one timbral singing. It's singing on support only. Of course, we have natural placement developed, and opening the throat is quite challenging at the beginning. But this is what is it. And it's not easy. I never said it is easy. I said if you want to have a custom-made instrument, your individual instrument, developed into 100% the best instrument you can ever possibly have, you have to use appoggio. Because in the letter also, they say when I'm singing higher than G and F, my throat gets totally, and I'm trying to use appoggio. That means, again, it's very theoretical to answer particularly. If you show me what's going on really when you do that, I will be able to answer you. But when you say this is Gotha, it could be few different reasons for that. Again, you're not supporting, or you don't have enough strength in your diaphragm, which is not a surprise. You're 18, 19 years old. If you check out my diaphragm, or in the whole stomach area, you understand why Pavarotti said the singer should be athletic. Because this area, it's a muscle of an enormous strength. Enormous strength. It's like a muscle of, it's very physical, and the whole impact, the whole energy goes into your stomach area. Of course, you need some years for that. So don't be frustrated. And I would not recommend you to leave the teacher, especially the teacher mentioned. I think he was a good singer, and he didn't follow appoggio because appoggio was more difficult than placement. Listen, you have to appreciate your teacher for saying you the truth. Not everyone is so open. And because if he says, well, I don't know, a few singers can say that. So I really appreciate your old teacher saying that, because that's truth. I don't have much time to listen to all of your applications if you send to me. I do to some, I give some advice. I don't have that much time to give answers to 100 letters. Again, you can save your time asking a question, because if you just asking a theoretical question like in this particular letter. It's like you're talking about if you're a painter, if you're an artist, and without showing me your paint, you're talking, you know what, I had this problem with these colors, I put it there, and you're talking to over the phone. It would be impossible for another artist to do something. Show me your picture. Thank you very much.